welcome everyone. Some of you are new to MOBTS. So I'm the president of MOBTS, the Management and Organizational Behavior Teaching Society. I'm also Dean of the J. Whitney Bunting College of Business at Georgia College and State University. And welcome to our first Inside the Manuscript. This is an intentional effort by the MOBTS board to begin to expand our reach outside of our membership, but also to provide resources to our members, especially in this environment where we're shifting many of us to remote teaching. And what better way to kick off the first inaugural Inside the Manuscript by examining and experiencing the work of Carolyn Plump and Julia LaRosa on their MTR resource review related to Kahoot, an online interactive learning platform. And so hopefully the plan moving forward, we've had about 50 plus registrants for this event, that this will be going to be an ongoing interactive, engaging Zoom event for MOBTS moving forward. For those new to the organization, starting first out, we do have the Journal of Management Education and also MTR Management Teaching Review. And I'm so thrilled and thankful to have Tracy Sigler, one of our outstanding associate editors, here to help facilitate the conversation and really open up an opportunity, not for you to just listen to the authors about their experience and their research, but to really engage and ask questions. This is not any type of recorded podcast. This is really meant to engage attendees to engage with our authors. So from there, I will hand it over to Tracy.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here with you tonight. I was the associate editor on this paper, but I want you all to know it started out as a presentation at OBTC, I think at the time, right? What year?
2016.
16, okay. And I was in that session, happened to be, and I think we encouraged them to submit a resource review on Kahoot, because at that time, not a lot of us were doing online, and they were, and they knew what they were doing. So in June of 17, their paper appeared in Management Teaching Review. Kathy Lovelace was the editor there, so I want to acknowledge her. Working with Jane Schmidt-Wilk now, so a great team. So I'm going to be here in the background to facilitate, to read through questions in the chat, and to try to help you get all you can from Julia and Carolyn's experience. We had a pre-meeting where they told me about how they have adapted to the current situation and how they've used Kahoot in new and exciting ways, and they're going to share that with you tonight. So I'll turn it over to Julia and Carolyn. You'll do a little introduction, right?
Great. I'll start. My name's Carolyn Plump, and I'm an associate professor at LaSalle University, as you can see from my visual background. And I started in academia in 2012. Prior to that, I was a practicing lawyer. So I'm teaching business law and management courses at LaSalle.
And hi to everybody from warm and sunny Arizona. I am Julia LaRosa. I teach in the management department at Arizona State University. I'm also what they call a teaching lead, which just means for our department of about 100 management professors, I'm the go-to gal for everything teaching and learning. But prior to coming to ASU 3 years ago, I got my doctorate and taught at Drexel University for 14 years. So many of you are familiar from my time on the East Coast. And I think it's about 110 today, in case you're wondering, but no humidity.
All right, I'll go ahead and start with the screen share of the slideshow. But as both everybody said, this is really meant to be informal. So we prepared slides to kind of talk through, but we hope to do 2 live presentations, one where those of you who want to participate can do a Kahoot, and a second one where I will show you how you go ahead and create questions and take you through that so you can see that. So, oops. So just as an introduction, it's a free online learning tool, which is great. Who doesn't love a free tool? And it really has lots of different question formats. As we go through the different question formats, we'll talk about which ones are you actually have to pay for if you want. They've changed it a little bit since we initially did this. Initially, it used to be all free, and now they've started adding for some services you have to pay for. So we'll talk about those a little bit as we go on.
It also functions remote, and it also functions synchronously between in-class and remote. If any of that's how we're teaching at ASU.
So we're going to do an online demonstration to start this off. And so if you have a mobile phone, smartphone, iPad, or computer, and you want to, a computer separate from this one, that you want to use, go ahead and use that. And in a second, I'm going to show you what you'll see, and then Julia's going to launch it. So what happens is you just go to Kahoot it. So that Kahoot.it. You don't have to download anything and just open it. You'll see this screen right here that asks for a game pin. You enter the game pin that Julia will give you in a moment, and then you enter. And you also have to enter your name or initials or nickname, whatever you want to use. And once we get going, you'll start to see these other two screens. The question will look like this on the computer screen, and then your answer options will be on this device. So Julia, I'm going to stop sharing if you want to go ahead.
Do you want me to turn on the music? Because
there is kind of tacky music, but the students seem to like it.
Yeah, I just had it turned way down. Now you can hear it. And so one of the things we do to get around any FERPA worries is we ask students to use anonymous names if that's a concern for yours. And I teach classes of 300 students, and Kahoot has been able to support numbers in that range. But I think one of the things that I like about it is not only is it engaging, it's engaging for both the students face-to-face as well as the ones online or remote learners. And I think we're all looking for those kinds of applications right now. And for me, somehow I feel like Kahoot is easier for me than polling in Zoom, though we are doing a lot of polling in Zoom.
And to add to Julia's comments about easy to use online, when we had to switch to remote learning in the spring, I did have students as part of a study guide create Kahoots in groups, and then they shared them on a discussion board. And students really seem to like that because they got to really go over the content, and then they got to see each other's and take each other's as practice for the test.
You guys let me know when we're going. What you're actually going to be taking, and we'll see how well you do, is a 1970s trivia quiz. So we'll see how well you guys do with this. Are you guys ready for me to go? So let me begin. And what you're going to do is if you have your phone, you'll answer on your phone. So one best practice Carolyn and I were talking about was you could be zooming in through your laptop and then use your phone for your Kahoot. So obviously if you have just one device, it's more difficult to zoom and to take this at the same time, but let's get going. See how you guys do. And you're going to notice here I have pictures. Kahoot has standardized pictures. They've now created, if you want to get a premium account, you could have your slides put on the screen. So, but they have a lot of pictures that you can use, which is what this picture is. Yay. So we had 16 of you that got this correct. And it's like a trivia game in that the people that do it quickest. So Jason was really quick, followed by Tracy on the draw on this. But let's do another one. You could just see. The other nice thing is if you teach multiple sections, people are focused on winning the game. If you teach multiple sections, you can create a quiz and use the same quiz across sections. You don't have to keep recreating the wheel. But I love what Carolyn's done in terms of allowing students to do this because, again, it supports this multimodal that we're living in.
One thing that's nice too is we get to see the results right away. And you immediately know where there might be an issue with students and you can stop and talk about it. And that's incredibly helpful in the context of teaching. And then one other point is you get points for speed and accuracy. So I usually always tell students that too, because at first sometimes they wait and they take their time and answer and think about it. But by the end, they start to participate at a fervid pace when they realize they get more points if they act quickly.
Quick. So Paul brings up an excellent point. So on your phone, you just see the colors, and that would be the same way on your laptop if you were doing it that way. That's just a process, okay, on your computer. It's just the way Kahoot runs. So I think it was set up that way so you're focusing on what the teacher's doing. You can obviously, everybody creates their own questions, super easy. And we'll do like a little mini lesson on that for everyone. But to Carolyn's point, I will, if I'm doing this for exam review, I'll toggle this back and forth with a PowerPoint. So I can teach them to, well, this is why the United States maybe was confusing for you, but this is why Britain is the right answer. Or I do the teaching later because everybody's worried about winning. And yay for you, it's all, Tracy's still holding her own here. So we'll keep going. And Carolyn and I were saying, we'll see. The show that set the record, nearly 100 million people turned into it. So let's see what you guys get. 1977, if you can remember that year. Yeah, MASH. So another question that came up, what about open-ended questions? Now Kahoot, because it's popular, has opened up other options. So if you're willing to pay for a membership or if your university does a membership, you have more options available to you. But everything I'm showing you here is free. Okay, I don't want to hear about people being born before 1977. Yeah, so roots, and nobody got it right, but it looks like Itzel did and Tracy did, so good for you. Would you like me to do one more? I think we have 9 of these. Yeah, keep going. All right, you guys are having fun. So you already see, if you're engaged in this, that this is kind of fun to do. And I actually drove this car. It was my favorite car. And I'm sorry, Brandon, this is for 70s people. There's an advantage to age. So VW Bug, right, was the #1. We'll just keep going. All right, Itzel, you need to bring it a little bit. You're falling behind. Okay, here we go. Let's see, 1973 Triple Crown. Let's see. There's a picture of it there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Secretariat, good. And I'm pondering as I'm giving this, I'm gonna go to the next one. I might even start one of my, we call it ASU Sync, this remote face-to-face with this, because now you're engaged, right? And you're thinking about the answers. And then I could get into a conversation, a mini lecture on each of these questions. You remember this question, XYZ happened, and I think now kind of our mind is open to learning and we want to do it. So it could be an interesting, good engagement. I like Bahar now has a flame next to him. So that's fantastic. Let's try one more. And the other thing I will tell you is I usually give little points of extra credit, but students really like that. Let's see how good people do with this. I can't believe it was 1971. Yeah, cigarette ads, guys. Isn't that crazy? I can remember cigarette ads, so I'm dating myself a little bit on that. Let's try one. Let's try one. Well, we actually have two more. Or maybe I had too many because I kind of got interested in the trivia. Might be Saturday Evening Post, I think. Life magazine, right? I even wondered if it was Saturday Evening Post. So if you notice, I'm going to go to the next one. There's an option for me to skip forward if I wanted to, so you could do that too. Anybody that watched Forrest Gump will get this one correct. And Deborah asked, can you send a complete Kahoot to someone else to use? The answer is yes. And Carolyn even was able to have students build Kahoots and then share them out with the rest of the class. So there are certainly quizzes that are portable. And I think that that's a really great method too. You could assign teams that they're going to do a review for this quiz or this week and another team for another week, etc. And that could make it fun. I think
the only thing to be
one. What were you going to say, Carolyn?
I'll let them answer it and then I'll...
Okay. I know this one. If you watch the Santa Claus, you might know this one.
I was just going to say that to share a link, it has to be public. And I'll show you when we go into kind of the nuts and bolts of Kahoot. You can make Kahoots private, but if you want to share them with other people, you have to make them public.
And so if I wanted to, you could do this. This is where having kind of different names works, but congratulations to you, Jason. You did well, but I usually will have students use anonymous names, and the only kind of a best practice is no off-color names and or symbols and or emojis. Though we've had, you know, Bin Laden play, we've had, you know, they always end me when they play, or their friends' names or something like that. All right, so I am passing back to you.
All right, so we'll go ahead and jump forward here to, I know some people were asking in the chat about how you create questions, so it might make sense now to show you some of that and how if you're just starting and you don't have an account. So basically, to sign up for an account, it's very easy. You just go to Get Kahoot or to Create Kahoot, and you sign up. It takes about a minute. You just put your name, your role, your email, and a password. And then when you log in, you have a couple different options. You can learn to use Kahoot through an online quiz that'll walk you through. You can create your own Kahoot, or you can find a public Kahoot. And so I'll show you where those are. I think it might make sense now for me to just go to Kahoot and show you what happens if you're trying to do it. So I already have an account. So imagine that you already had your account and you click to log in. When you log in, you'll get to this screen. This part right here that says Kahoots, you click on it, it takes you to Kahoots you already have. And if you want to create one, you just click on Create Kahoot. So I'll show you a couple different options. As you can see, anything that has has this little crown means it's part of the Pro account. But I'll just take you through. I clicked on the fact that I want to create a new Kahoot. I click on this right here to create a title. Let's say this is my demo. I can put a description if I want to, showing people how to use Kahoot. And then you remember that I said that you have options where you can make it available to everyone, or you can make it only available to you. And sometimes I put a image in the beginning that I want to play instead of what you saw, the blank screen with the pin. So once when I did a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I had the soundtrack from Willy Wonka playing in the back. Then you just click done and you're ready to add your first question. So let's see, I'm going to do, it's already defaults to a multiple choice question. So let's see, how about, what is your favorite food? I just type that in and then I type in my answers. So I might type pizza, steak, you can tell it's dinner time, I'm hungry, avocado, and my favorite, anything chocolate. And then I click what is the correct answer. This is for a single answer. Multiple select answers, if you're asking for people where you check multiple times, that's actually a pay feature that they just added. They didn't used to have that. You'll notice you have a couple other options here. Say I want to upload an image from the library that they have. Oh, there's an avocado. Perfect. I'll add that. And I'll show you in the next one when I create it, how to upload from yours or how to do YouTube. I have a couple other options. I can leave it at the default of 20 seconds, which usually works pretty well. That's, I think, what Julia was using. If you have a video, I recommend making sure that you allow time for them to watch the whole video. So I sometimes change it to 120 seconds so that they can watch it and then answer it. Another option you have is with the points. You have three options: 0 points, 1,000 points, or 2,000 points. So that's the first question. I'm done now. I can move on and I can add another one. Here are all the different options that I have. Why don't I do, let's see, how about if I do another quiz one, but this one I'll do multiple answer so you can see that. And again, it's really, oops, trying to get my bar out of the way here so I can see. Let's see, what is I can't see with my bar, sorry. What is the first thing you will do post-COVID, right? And for this one, I'm going to allow multiple answers. Let's see, go to movies, travel, hug loved ones, and party. And then because it's multiple answers, I can select all of these, showing that any of these would work. And this one, let's say I want to upload an image that I already have on my computer. I go to my pictures, I scroll down, oh, there's one for COVID, and I just click on it. So it's pretty easy. I'll do one more that is a different type, and this is a pay for option. So this is called a puzzle, and if you want students to put something in order, you can do this. So what are the stages of litigation? And let's see, you have to put them in order, in the correct order, and then Kahoot will scramble them for you. So complaint, answer, discovery, and trial. And let's see, I'll upload another image. And let's see, I'll do scales of justice for this one. One other option you have, I'll just show in one other question. Let's see, I'll try type an answer, is you can also upload a YouTube link. So you just click on YouTube, say I'm going to ask a question about the weather. This is my daughter is sharing a YouTube account, so that's why there's some Wings of Fire things on here too. So Weather Channel. Say I wanted to do, oops, I don't know why that did that, sorry. I find this, I click on it, I link up back on that, I copied, oops, I'm sorry. I post the link here, and then it's automatically in here, and I can type a question. And this will be an answer. What is the weather in your area? And then students can type answers in this box. And so you can get all kinds of answers like that. So does anyone have any questions on, oh, actually a couple of things I want to show you real quick. Back to, so when you're done, you click done. It might not be letting me do done because my screen is, all right. There's a couple other options up in this dashboard that are good to know about. One is the Discover, and I mentioned that you can create your own or you can look for public ones. So if you wanted to say, are there any management Kahoots out there? I can click on business management and I get a whole list of different Kahoots, and I can click on them, and I've used this before for myself, and then you can actually duplicate it and you can revise it however you want it. And so that's a really nice feature. There's also a nice feature called reports. And so when I use Kahoot in the classroom, I ask them to use their initials. And there's a reason that I do that is because I can go into these reports later, and I can see when I click on this, it takes a minute to upload how many players I had, maybe I didn't click on the right one, what the difficult questions were. So if there's one question that a lot of people got wrong, I can see that. And I can also see, it shows me who needs help. So if there was one student who got, 9 of 10 wrong, I'll see that student's name and initial here, and I can follow up with that student separately. So that's a really nice part of Kahoot too. So I'm going to click out of Kahoot and move on. All right, so the types of questions that Julie and I have used, most of these, as I said, some of them are free. You can see I demonstrated a few of them. I think Julie is going to talk a little bit about the polls. She's used that. There's also importing slides. I have not used this. I don't know if Julie has used this, but that's part of the Pro account. You can attach slides to questions. And so this is a nice feature if students are doing it at their own pace and they're not sure and you want to attach a slide maybe from when you were teaching to show them, more information, more detailed information that explains the answer. That's a nice feature too that it has.
Now, Carolyn, someone asked, have you used the video feature? And I know it's something that you've done. It's probably something I'm going to ponder about negotiation, because there's a lot of different negotiation techniques. And I'm envisioning showing the technique and then having a Kahoot question. What is it?
And I have used the video feature. I haven't used links from YouTube that were public. I used YouTube links from my private channel. So what I did for the exercise that I used this for was to upload short 1-minute clips from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And then I showed the 1-minute clips and asked the students a question. It was part of a review. And I thought it was a fun way for them to review it, to watch movie clips and then answer questions. And so it worked really well.
There was another.
Yeah, go ahead. Look, Julia.
I was going to say there's another question about short answer. And so I don't use Kahoot as an assessment vehicle. We use Canvas, so I use McGraw-Hill for quizzes. This is more about fun, engagement, anonymous surveys. I use this all the time if I'm touching on issues that potentially are touchy, or let's say I teach international business and we've read an article about the trade talks. I'll have 4 different options that students can answer in terms of opinions. And that way, 300 people are getting involved in a discussion by using Kahoot, but I have never used it to grade.
Julia raises a great point about touchy subjects. I've definitely used it for that too. I had a sports law class I was teaching, and I was taking a poll of students of who agreed with Colin Kaepernick and saw him as a hero, who disagreed with him kneeling and saw him as a villain. I think I phrased it slightly different than that, but I wanted to gauge the room and then we could kind of talk about it a little bit, but I didn't want anyone to have to self-identify, because it sometimes can be, there's lots of subjects to cover. So before I introduced that poll question in Kahoot, when we signed in, I made sure to tell everybody to write something anonymous. Your initial, write 1, 2, 3 as your initial, or give a fake name. Let's see. So applications. The one thing that's nice about it, especially in the new world we find ourselves in, is that you can use it in the classroom and you can use it outside the classroom too, online and asynchronously, which is really nice. And there's lots of different ways to use it. I have used it to introduce the complete course and talk about an overview. I've also used it for exam review, as I mentioned, with the short video clips. And Julia has used it in real-time polling. We talked about an anonymous discussion starter, and I think Julie was going to talk a little bit about the negotiations application that she used recently.
So at the end of my negotiation class, students provide a presentation and they'll use Kahoot as they're demonstrating a negotiation, and the students in the classroom got to vote which technique they thought should come next, and they could rate the people in the negotiation. And again, it was really fun and engaging. The other way I also use Kahoot, I do it all the time in my 300-person lectures, is I do it as an introduction. So, where are you from? I ask all different kinds of questions. Are you a senior, junior, sophomore, etc.? And it's a really quick way to kind of let the students kind of get involved and learn one another. And I think I'm definitely going to be doing that as we move into this synchronous remote kind of environment, because I'm going to be curious how many people are not in Arizona who are taking the class. But just as you guys saw at the beginning, it's fun, right? And you can't, I would not overuse it at all. I wouldn't use it every class, but it's kind of one of those things that you can put in and everybody kind of wakes up and enjoys. I have not used this asynchronously. This is only a synchronous tool. So when I'm talking about ASU Sync, I have 75% of my students who are coming in remotely and 25% of my students that are in class. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about async.
So you'll see the benefits here. Also a couple kind of lessons learned or things that we've run into. There is a character limit on the questions. So when you're creating them, you have to be a little more pithy than maybe we're prone to be as professors. There's a time limit to read the questions. Again, you can make it a little bit longer. And so if you have a number of international students or where English is a second language, I try and make sure I adjust the timing for that. I've sometimes had issues with connectivity or students not having devices. There's a nice feature on Kahoot where they can do team play. So I'll allow them to kind of work together, and that's a nice feature too. And sometimes students get kicked out of Kahoot quiz if they sign in too early and it takes a while for other people to log in. I don't know if that happened to anybody when they were getting ready to play Julia's quiz, but sometimes you have to keep refreshing the screen, so that can be a little frustrating. But those are really the only things that I've found that are kind of stumbling blocks with it. So with that kind of any questions. I wasn't able to read the chat while I was screen sharing. And so
there was a slide before that. So go back to the slide previous to this. I think, did we talk about this? Yeah. So one of the things that we're finding as we're venturing into the brave new world, at least at ASU, is don't try to take on too many different technologies because your head will explode. So Kahoot is kind of this easy, attainable tool that you can bring in and liven up class. And it's not difficult. Certainly encourage the G-rated names. Yeah, we said be judicious. I probably wouldn't do it every class. But one technique that I'm doing,
I definitely noticed, yeah.
I was going to say one technique that I've started to do is at the beginning of a new content sector, I may ask 3 or 4 questions just to kind of gauge how much students know, because my course is a 300 level, so I'm trying to figure out what they remembered from before, and that's useful. And then you could also do the same quiz after and see where people were at if they were gaining knowledge.
I don't know if you can see the chat. Somebody asked about, can you talk more about how to use it with Teams?
Sure. When you, there's different modes. And so there's what's called classic mode, which is just one player, one device. And then there's team modes where you can assign teams or they can decide on their own. They can, sometimes they just, it's not so formal, and I just have, well, used to have them sit next to each other if they wanted to share one device and talk about it. But you can also assign them to teams. I haven't done the, I have allowed them to work together to share devices, although obviously that won't work in the fall of 2020 with the new social distancing rules.
So I'm not a presenter, but I've used Kahoot since I sat in on this presentation and worked on this paper. And so I have students in teams through the whole semester, and I use it as a quiz or exam review. And so they're in teams and they compete against each other and they get very excited. So I don't use it for points or real grades, but it's just a review for the exam, and then the top team maybe gets some extra credit.
And there's also candy, is always, or used to be, right, when we could hand things out. I think Charles Fortichari on the phone has used candy with students, and I've used that too.
Candy.
They will work for candy, for
and
sure.
I used to use it like when somebody changed in leaderboard or when somebody was on a hot streak. They loved it.
Which was,
go ahead.
Which we saw on the, when we were playing Julia's quiz, we saw the person who went to the top with the little flame. That meant he was on a hot streak. So that's what Charles is referring to when he said a hot streak.
So there's a question here about using YouTube, and it's kind of long and I'm not sure I'm going to get it. So somebody want to ask that live?
Yeah, this is David Stellick. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
The question is, when you have detailed questions you would like to ask within a Kahoot and you cannot fit them even as pithy as you may try to be, or a scenario-based question, such as I think Julia said with regard to negotiation technique, that you want to present a lot of content in a short period of time to ask a question, but then your responses also are going to be truncated because of the character limit. Have you tried using YouTube to showcase the scenario and the responses, and then use Kahoot simply to do a 1, 2, 3, 4 option? Or basically offloading the content of the question and the content of the responses onto a slide or onto a YouTube, and then use Kahoot simply as the response platform?
So to your point, I think the video sounds fantastic. What I have done is maybe I'll have a series of questions around one case. So since I'm delivering it, I'll deliver the entire case, right? So a lot of information. You could also do that using a video and then have 3 succinct questions kind of related to the case. So I've done it that way. I have found shorter is better. We had 9 questions, and I don't know if it felt to you all like it was a little long. I like to have it 3 or 4 questions and maybe do 3 different games if I'm doing an exam review. That's just what I have found. Fewer is better, because if you get behind, you kind of lose interest.
Somebody asked about the cost. Carolyn, do you have the pro account?
Yes, the pro account, I just checked the other day. It's $199 for the year, and it is $15 for the month. What I don't know is if you set up a Kahoot by buying a pro account, can you use it outside of that month or that year? And I don't know the answer to that, and I could not find that because I've only used the free account when I've used Kahoot. And there are ways around like the poll, which is typically a pro account requirement to do a poll. There are ways to create your question such that it's a poll, right? You can do true and false, but it can be yes or no in your polling, or you can do multiple choice, kind of like a poll. So there are creative ways around it if you don't want to buy the pro account.
There's another question I didn't know the answer to about if you create a Kahoot and you allow it to be public, that means anybody can use it and they can find it in the search. First, is that right? And then do you know if somebody else uses your Kahoot and changes it, or does it go back up then? Any experience with that?
That's a great question. I don't know because I've never received a notice, but I make all my Kahoots private, so that would make sense that I wouldn't get a notice. I have used one person's Kahoot, but I don't know if they ever used it. They never contacted me. So I don't know. Julia, do you have
So I'm like you,
any experience with
Carolyn, I make everything private, but Kahoot began as a K-12 tool. So there'll be times when your students will say, oh, I use this in 4th grade or something. So I think in the K-12 world, there's a lot more sharing that teachers do with one another that is less likely in the higher ed realm.
I noticed there was something about creative negotiation applications on one of the slides. Could you talk about that?
So the way we'll do it is a student team has been assigned a case, and they're doing the negotiation in front of us. And so 2 minutes into the negotiation, I say, let's do a Kahoot. And in it, there would be 4 different options for techniques for them to try. So distributive technique, you're pushing me and I'm not thinking in the negotiation mindset. Some different techniques, right? And so then the class chooses, clicks, and then the team has to continue the role play given the directive from the class. Does that make sense?
Not completely. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more. So they're broken out into teams.
No, so there's one team that's presenting to the whole class.
Okay.
And we have a little background on the case, but this team really knows the case well. And they'll be negotiating along, and then I'll say, okay, let's stop. And there are different techniques we've learned in class. So a distributive technique would be a heavy-handed, I win, you lose. Another one, I'm just drawing a blank, and I'm so sorry. Where we log roll, so you take something outside the negotiation, and you bring it into the negotiation. But there would be 4 different techniques, and we as a class choose what we'd like to see this team continue doing in their negotiation. So then whatever we have chosen, they then have to continue to act it out. And you have 2 or 3 of those. And so what it means is people have to really be on their toes, and they have to understand what those techniques are. But it makes it really fun for the people participating, because now I'm engaged in really watching them demonstrate these techniques.
Got it. Thanks. That makes sense. So using it as a polling function to get the mood of the class to do something and drive actions.
Yeah. It's polling the class, and then the students are involved with the negotiation because they get to choose what they want the negotiators to do. And the thing is paybacks, because if we're difficult to your team, they can be difficult to you, right? So there's a little bit of that. But like I see Jason smiling, it's all about just kind of bringing life to class while we're learning. And Paul said here, improv, that was the new word. We've been using the word pivot a lot and digitally agile. The new word that they're talking to us about as teachers in this world is improvisation. So it you know, that's active improvisation.
So Carolyn's put up some discussion questions. Anybody else have any experiences to share or questions that we haven't covered yet? Okay, so this is going to be available, right, Brandon, the recording?
Yes, after a couple days, if you give me a couple days, I will edit it accordingly and post it on our website. We'll post it to YouTube and embed it on the website. We'll post it to our Facebook group as well.
Okay, so we had talked a little bit about continuing the conversation. So if we post it to once it gets posted to the Facebook page, we can continue the conversation. So if you have questions that come up after then, and we have a couple questions here, that we can continue this conversation, and maybe you have some other tools. So someone's using it to summarize topics every week in business ethics. Oh, has anyone compared Poll Everywhere? How does it compare to Poll Everywhere?
So I used to use Poll Everywhere. Poll Everywhere is a pay per use, was at least that was the experience at Drexel, and it was not as intuitive for me as Kahoot. Kahoot felt easier to me. That's only my experience.
And I used Socrative, and it's nice. It's pretty easy to use. It's just not, for some reason, the students seem to like the kind of corny music and the colors of Kahoot. And I like that you can drop in images. You can, at least the first time I haven't used Socrative now for a year or two. They may have updated it, but you didn't used to be able to do that. So it was a little more boring visually, I think, for students than Kahoot was. Has anybody else used other tools that they want to talk about or share with people to compare?
We're using Zoom polling all the time right now. That's a big heavy hitter, just because that's how the class is being delivered. But again, it's not quite there's not engagement to it like you do with the Kahoot.
The students do like to see their names go up and down on the leaderboard list. But as Julia mentioned, there is kind of fatigue if there are too many questions and somebody drops down. So keeping the quizzes and the kind of short to maybe 4 or 5 questions, even if you do it at different parts, different points during the class, seems to work well.
How do you like Zoom polling, Julia? Are you the one using that?
It's not quite as intuitive. It feels a little more like a heavy lift to me. But it's just because I'm used to Kahoot. So in keeping with this idea of kind of staying focused with all the new technology, I probably will continue to use Kahoot because I know it, and not Zoom polling because it's a newer kind of modality for me. I think we're finding that to be a real best practice because so many of us are overwhelmed with everything that's happening and all the different technology. And we want to appear to be well-versed and ready to go. So I think that's kind of becoming a best practice. Focus on that technology that you want to use and allow yourself to learn new technology later on.
And I have used Zoom polling, and I do like it. It's particularly if I don't want to have to switch back and forth for screen or get onto Kahoot. If I just want to ask one or two things quickly, I have used just Zoom polling, and I like having it right in my meeting so that I can do a breakout room and send questions or do that. So breakout rooms sending questions to students is a nice feature too to use.
Does anybody complain they can't participate because they don't have a mobile device? That might go back to our discussion about using it online. Carolyn, you want to?
I have, and I was concerned about that in the spring, that students were sometimes using their phones to do synchronous classes online, and so they didn't have the ability to then also do a Kahoot. So that's why for that portion in the spring, I had them send in Kahoots on discussion boards, the links, and the students played them. In class, I have had students, and that's easy. That was easy enough in the past just to let them share. And I guess in the socially distanced world of classrooms now, they could just watch what happens. They could still see the answer and hear the discussion if they didn't have a device with which they could participate.
Okay, so somebody asked about the slides. We can make those available somehow. They'll be part of the video, obviously, or the recording that gets posted on Facebook, but we can share the slides as well. So I feel like we're wrapping up at this point. Hopefully you've learned some new things about Kahoot. I certainly have, and thank you to Julia and Carolyn and Brandon and Michael who got us started. Right? And I think it was a success. So hopefully we'll have more of these. Can't remember what they're called. Virtual.
Inside the manuscript.
Inside the manuscript. Yes. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for Brandon for setting everything up.
Wonderful session. Thank you so much, Tracy, Julia, and Carolyn. Thank you for kicking this off. This is something we've been wanting to do for a while. It's something that Michael and Gary Stark and I have been talking about for a long time now, and we are honored that you were willing to be the first ever session of this. And this is something that we do plan on offering. We hope moving forward on a monthly basis or so, along with our other events like our Ask Me Anythings, our fireside chats, and anything else we come up with, especially in this increasingly online and virtual landscape. So thank you everybody. If there are no further questions, we're gonna wrap this up, and I'll end up closing out the room. But I appreciate you all showing up. The fantastic turnout, and if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us.